Hello, my name is Judith. I am very happy to be a part of this fantastic convention, and I would like to talk about something today. I've been dealing with quite a couple of people switching from the violin to the viola, a lot of them students at all levels, and there is one thing that has crystallized there for me, which is the hairy issue of our instrument, and that is our bow. When people switch from the violin to the viola, I find that the beginning is usually quite a busy time. Everybody is very concerned about learning the clef. All the notes are suddenly in different places, and there is an additional string to deal with, and that sounds different, and those low frequencies seem to be difficult for some people's ears to hear correctly in the first place. The left arm is struggling. Typically, you have a more heavy, bigger instrument on your shoulder, so you have to balance that weight. You have to extend your arm more. Some people struggle with vibrato because of that. You have to extend your fingers more in order to hit the right notes. So there is quite a lot of things going on that are keeping you busy. And the one thing that people commonly think is the easiest in the beginning when they start, and which is the same then on the violin, is the bow. And this is now something that I'm becoming quite passionate about, the fact that this is absolutely not so. On the violin, you've got shorter strings, mostly with a higher string tension. They are thinner, and that means that just by using the natural weight of your bow, you can achieve a very, very good sound. You don't have to press on it or anything. And also, no offense to anybody, but I find that a lot of violin players are actively holding the bow, which is, of course, a different muscular tension overall in the arm, a different setup, a different way of moving your arm. There are quite a lot of things that are really different. And obviously, this is not going to impair your sound, and anybody with a decent bow technique will play fantastically like that. On the viola, we deal now with the opposite scenario, and one doesn't think that it would make such a big difference. We share 3 strings after all, and the C string is, yes, it is stronger. It's not that much stronger. It's really not such a big deal, one would think. But also with the increased string length and all, they do seem to present a higher resistance to the bow. A lot of people find it weird that they had an absolute working bowing technique on a violin, and now on a viola they struggle to produce a sound, or they struggle to maintain the sound quality. There are squeaky string crossings, there are places in between where they lose contact to the string, and some people really battle with that in the beginning. So when I start working on that with a student, I would typically either take, for advanced to intermediate level, beginner to intermediate level, a simple 1-octave string or a Shevchik Opus 1 or Schradig fingering exercise, just something that falls on the ear easy and that you can memorize reasonably quickly. And then we get going with that. And then after a couple of goes, when the left hand and the left arm are comfortable, I ask them to listen to their sound and then make me a bigger sound. What typically happens now is that the elbow goes up and there is index finger pressure, sometimes combined with a bigger bow speed, sometimes not. But it still seems like a lot of people want to actively get a sound out of the string by using muscles. The only problem with that is the moment we use muscles, we tighten them. And tightening a muscle on the bow arm can really lead to a problem on the viola. So what I do now is I try to demonstrate the difference, just sound-wise at first, without explaining what I'm doing. So we have been playing nicely. Now I ask for an increase in sound, and now this happens. This is a louder sound, but it sounds more flat somehow. It loses the volume that it had before. And now I demonstrate the following. You put your bow down on the string without playing at first, and you raise your elbow to slightly above bow level, just ever so slightly. now you can suddenly feel that there is weight on your index finger. And if now in the next step you relax your shoulder and your upper arm without dropping your elbow again, the elbow should ideally be a little bit higher than the bow, then you suddenly find that just by using gravity and relaxing your muscles, you've got pressure on your index finger. You are not making that pressure, it's a passive movement. It's a passive relaxation of shoulder and upper arm, but keeping the elbow high enough to make that weight go through to your index finger. So instead of holding the bow, you put it down on the string. And instead of producing a sound, actively producing a sound through your hand, you relax and you weigh the bow into the string by using your natural weight of your arm and gravity. As simple as that. So as opposed to having to work harder pretty much everywhere else in life in order to get a better result, if it comes to sound, and particularly on a viola, you actually have to relax to get a better result. Of course, you can sell that very well, particularly to teenagers. They are always quite fond of that idea. But that is really how it works. I haven't got a big clue of physics. I can't explain all of this, but I believe it is because you do not squash the amplitude of the swinging string under the bow if you do this. Your bow rather follows that amplitude up to a point. And since this is now a total different use of your hardware, of your physical right arm, I like introducing that with short bows in the beginning. And then gradually increasing the length of the bow, because the biggest issue here is to figure out at every centimeter of your bow, where exactly does your elbow have to be in order to maintain the pressure of gravity on the bow. Since the bow is not making a flat movement, but rather a slightly convex one, you have to go with the bow. You have to slightly adjust your elbow. You have to adjust the movement of your lower arm when you start using your upper arm. There's a lot of small things involved there, but once you get this feeling for your index finger being on the bow with a weight on top of it, if you try and keep that for the entire length of your bow in order to maintain an even contact and an even sound, you will find that the movement of your right arm is really changing quite drastically. And of course, that can be confusing in the beginning. You have to take it slow and easy, but you have an immediate reward with the kind of sound that you are producing, with this voluminous, rich, dark viola sound. And that, after all, is why most of the people that change from violin to viola actually do it. Now, they prefer the sound, they prefer the lower register and this particular warmth that only the viola can bring. That is not even in the cello sound usually. There is just a different color to it. And if you want to get that out, you really have to do things that you didn't think you were going to have to do. So that is something that on average works quite well. And it makes the playing physically more desirable as well. Now you are more relaxed, you remain more relaxed. There is no holding, there is a putting down. There is no seizing if you want to increase speed. There is a principle of relaxation and working with gravity, which makes the entire thing at first a bit more passive in the perception. You are not trying to do this. You are merely trying to follow your bow. You are trying to give an impulse, and once you have the bow moving, you follow it, rather than trying to be in charge every millimeter of the way. So that really makes things quite relaxed also. One other example is tremolo. There is, of course, this common misconception that viola players are the slow ones in the orchestra and you can't really play fast bows on the viola. Needless to say, I'm rather passionately opposed to that. But what I have found also is that it depends very much on the kind of movement that you are trying to use. When we play tremolo, and everybody knows this feeling of opening the last 2 pages of the last movement of a Bruckner symphony, what happens a lot is we put the bow on and then we want to be quick. And 80% of people start seizing up this front muscle of the lower arm and the outside muscle of the upper arm. And if you focus on it, you can feel a center of tension. I always imagine them like sitting there in a little knot on the outside of the elbow. And then the arm gets tired after a while, and then the shoulder starts seizing up a little bit, and then you've got another center of tension here. So that is something that can really spoil the fun of playing tremolo, because it's really not very comfortable. Now, I know I have been talking about a slightly raised elbow a lot. When it comes to tremolo, you actually do it differently, or I do it differently rather. I drop my elbow a little bit. I try to have a physical picture in my mind of the line from my shoulder to the outside of my elbow, having this kind of shape. Not up here and then down and then up here again, but the exact opposite. This banana shape, sort of. What that does is it shifts that little knot of tension into the inside of your elbow. You can suddenly feel that the center of the muscular tension is in here, and you can relax around that. Apart from the fact that it makes you last quite a lot longer without getting into pain, it makes for a much more even sound quality as well. Because what we often have with tremolo is that the sound breaks, that there are squeaky things in there. You change bows so quickly, it's very easy to lose string contact for one or two of these quick up or down bows. And that leads to little volume jumps in the tremolo. There are a couple of notes that have contact, then there are a couple that haven't, and that sounds softer, or that even can get slightly squeaky. Then you catch the string again, then you have sound again. It's not very even that way. And if you try and really relax your arm and imagine that line and do it like this, your bow is practically moving on the spot, and you have a contact that is the same all the time. So you have a very even sound, no matter at what speed you do it. So that can also be very helpful. And it's again the same principle. You work with gravity, you just sort of, since you are staying on the spot now, you are not doing any big movements, there is no need to follow this curve of the bow. So you can afford to drop your elbow to add a bit of weight, and then you keep the bow almost stationary, and you try to do it from the inside of your elbow so that you can really physically relax the muscles of your arm around that. Makes for a much more enjoyable tremolo playing. You can increase the volume with that as well quite efficiently, and you don't get tired all that easily. So maybe that is something to try out on a violin as well, but I really find on a viola it works pretty well. I want to say thank you for whoever took the time to watch this. I had great fun in thinking about this, coming up with it and presenting it. I think this whole conference is a fantastic idea, actually, and I very much hope that we can take it live in the future. But since we are all used to Zoom screens and Skype screens and video screens anyway, this is a wonderful way to get something kickstarted. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to everybody's presentations, and I'm really looking forward to everything that we can learn from this and from this exchange of everybody's experiences. It's a fantastic thing. Thank you.